Well, that's amazing. Well, I heard you say, a lot of words that I like love, like engagement and being, of course, present and nurturance. And we talked about vulnerability and just in that. So, what is your experience, or I guess professionally and as a father, like how does one ensure that they are showing up nurturing, like in a nurturing manner with their child? Like, so I'll give you a scenario, throwing it off at the top. You are tired, you have taught all day, you're just coming over a cold, and your child is having, say they are like 5 years old and having their tantrum because they just don't want to go to bed and they want to, I don't know, have cookies and milk. And I'm just making this up on the fly.
Yeah.
And they are having a massive breakdown because you are saying, no, like you need to go to bed. This is what happens. And they throw this at you. You don't love me. How come my older brother or sister gets to stay up a little bit later? Whether that's
Yeah.
the case or not, I'm not sure. How do you, in that moment, as a father, and how would you show up, and how does somebody just demonstrate that firmness? And also, it's good for the child to go on time to bed and not have cookies. You gotta have
Yeah.
your dinner or whatnot, whatever the case may be. Might be after dinner. How do you navigate that and manage your own inner challenges?
What a great question, and so much to unpack. There's sort of two sides to it, or two parts to it, I would say. The first is that you're coming. The scenario you gave me is it's the end of a day. So
Mhm,
my cognitive, my physical energy has been somewhat spent, right?
mhm.
I am at the lowest point I could possibly be. Something that would maybe not trigger me at 10 a.m. will set me off if it's 8:30 p.m., especially if I know that on the other side of bedtime, I get to like sit down and watch TV and do all these things that I like to do. So how do we deal with a situation like that? Well, it comes from, first of all, instilling habits and understanding what your values are. If your value is being emotionally present for your child, what do you do with that? Like, that might be your goal, but like, what does that look like in practice? Well, here's what it looks like for me.
Mhm.
Um, the tendency when let's use the bedtime example, because my son did this. My son's 5 now, but there was a while where he was losing his nap and we didn't know. Like, his nap, he wasn't didn't need a nap anymore during the day, but we were giving it to him anyway at school. And he would go to sleep at night, and bedtime would go great. We'd do our routine, be fun, read a story, and it'd be time for bed. And I'd say, "Okay, good night, Desi," and I'd close the door, and he'd be like, "Dada, I don't want to go to sleep." Sometimes he'd even come out of his room and stand at the top of the stairway like a ghost. I don't know. Someone described it as like like a scene from a terror movie where like you're sitting and like your kid just shows up in front of you silently, like, what are you doing out of bed? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Um, so what do you do in that situation? What most people do, and I know this because I've seen this happen with other people who will take care of my child sometimes, is
Yeah.
they'll say to him, "Well, Desi, you gotta sleep. Sleep's good for you. Sleep's regenerative, restorative. It's you won't be able to function tomorrow if you don't sleep. You just got to do it."
Mhm.
And it's a natural tendency to be able to say that to a child. But
Mhm.
your example was, well, what if they turn around and say, "You don't love me"? And the
Mhm.
truth is, when we say things like that to them, like, "Well, you just gotta," because even if we give reasons, like there's the classic "because I said so," but even if we give actual legitimate reasons, like sleep is good for you, um, it still might feel like we don't love them. So why? Why is that? Here's what I do instead. And this is because I have training in developmental psychology and because I'm a trained teacher. So I don't want anyone to think this is just like I just came up with this. But
Right.
what I do is I say to him, "You don't want to go to sleep. Okay. What would you rather be doing?"
Mm.
Right? So this question is not an invitation to go do something else. This is an imagination question. This is him exploring in his mind, if I didn't have to sleep, what would I be doing? So he'll say to me, "Oh, I'd go to the playground." And I'd say, "Ooh, the playground at this time of night? It's going to be creepy and dark and cozy. We could bring some blankets and like hot cocoa. Like, what would you want to use at the playground? The slide, the swings, and we go on this full story. Not a long one, minute long, maybe." And then as soon as that's over, I say, "Yeah, that'd be fun, wouldn't it?" And this happened without fail every time. I'd say, "Okay, good night, Desi." I'd close the door and he'd say, "Good night, Dada." Now, why does that work? Why does that work? I didn't offer him, "Let's go to the playground." I didn't offer him, "Come downstairs and let's talk about this." I took 2 minutes to
Right.
simply acknowledge his feelings and let him expand on how he was feeling. And that was all he needed. Now, it's not always the case that this is going to work perfectly. It's not a recipe for, like, if you just acknowledge feelings, the kid won't throw a tantrum or do whatever. Of course not. But it proved to me in that moment, in this particular instance, that what he needed was not like an invitation to come downstairs or stay up late. It was simply to have his feelings heard. And once he had that, he had the safety and security he needed to fall asleep.